Back to completing dressing our loom. Take about an inch worth of warp, line up the ends as evenly as possible, and tie a knot at the end of that bunch. You're going to do this for the entirety of your warp. If you notice, I'm starting in the middle, and that's out of habit because I was always trained to dress a loom from the middle out. Then you can kind of make sure that they're straight, and you'll be able to see where you want to put them on your stick. Once these are here, put them down so you can have room to work with. Next, you're going to take one of your bunches, pull it so it's a little bit taut, and then separate it about half. Take your thumb and index finger facing down, flip it up, touch your thumb to your index finger, and then loop it around. And that'll give you a nice little loop to be able to put your warp stick on. I'll show you one more time. Take one of your small bunches, split it in half. Your thumb and forefinger go facing down. Flip them up, touch your thumb and forefinger together, and then loop it around and thread your warp stick through. Don't forget to thread your warp strip through the little rope that's tying it to your back beam, because I've done that before too, and I've had to undo my work. Now that we have our warp already attached to the back beam, we're ready to wind it on. And to do this, we're going to need some sort of paper. Now, today I'm going to use this corrugated cardboard. But in the past, I've used just shopping bags is fine. Any kind of heavy duty paper, because basically the purpose of it is when you wind your thread on the back warp, you want a layer between your threads so that they stay nice and even, and you don't create uneven tension because now you have threads resting upon thread. So this just basically goes between the thread sets as you wind it up. And like I said, I've used any kind of heavy paper. It could be cardstock, it can be an old poster, maybe one of your kids did a project that you're not using anymore. Just anything to separate the threads. So we're going to wind it up and then tie it on our front beam, and then we get a weave. Again, I take my choke ties off as I go, but you can see this is all like knotty, and I just wanted to go over how instead of combing, because your tendency is you want to comb, you know, but what you do is you separate and pull, separate and pull. Now I have seen weavers online comb, but Miss Gertie and Miss Patsy would have my head if they saw me combing through threads. I've wound my warp and now I'm adding more paper between the threads. So it's pretty easy. You just wind it till the end and you get another sheet and put it through. It's better if they overlap. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. In the winding, they get separated. Um, and after you have the second one in, you continue pulling and separating your warp and then winding it off the back. This is much easier with a table loom than with a floor loom. Our last step before we start weaving, we are going to tie our warp onto our front beam. Now, I have to tell you, if you remember, I measured half of my warp on the warping board and half on the warping mill, and the warping mill was a little bit longer, and I said, oh, well, this one's going to be a little bit longer, so that's okay. So I have this warp that's this long, then I have this warp that's this long. So a discrepancy in length, but I am going to use that and weave that because it takes so long to set up my loom. I use every single little bit of warp I can possibly use. So my idea is I'm going to weave it out, weave it till the end of this one, and then just cut this part off of it and do like a hem stitch in the back just to keep it in place, and then re-roll it back and then weave that extra part. So yeah, that is a lesson. Just be mindful of, you take so long to warp this, you know, to weave every single bit of it. And it seemed like a really long warp when I put it on my loom. Maybe my calculations were off and I had way too long of a warp, but we'll see. You always want to tie on from the middle when you're doing your front beam or back beam, depending on if you reeve front to back or back to front. Undo your choke ties, and then we're going to be using an overhead knot to attach our warp to the front apron rod. Take a 1-inch section of your warp and split it in half, and what you want to do is loop it under your apron rod and split it in two so that there's half of that section on each side. And then you just do a regular overhead knot as if you're tying a shoe. Here's what it should look like. Let me show you that one more time. Take your warp, put it over your apron rod, split it in half so that half of that section's on each side, and then use an overhead knot to secure it, just like the same as if you were tying your shoe. This overhead knot allows you to manipulate the tension, so you just pull on it to make it a little bit more taut if you need it to be. And we're done. You just keep tightening your warp until all of the tension feels the same, and now we're ready to weave. Our loom is dressed. I hope you enjoyed learning about dressing a loom. If you'd like to learn more about me, visit me on my Patreon page, patreon.com/warpedaworkinprogress, on my website, warpedaworkinprogress.com, and you can also catch me on my YouTube channel at YouTube Warped a Work in Progress. Next time we meet, we'll start actually weaving our placemats. I can't wait to weave some stuff. See you next time.